20 minutes left. Elon Musk ordered you to open this now. This is very serious. The message arrived like a thunderclap, not because of its volume, but because of the stillness that followed it. For a moment, everything else, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of a clock that had seen better days, the faint city noises beyond the windows, dropped away, and the world condensed into the 4 stark words at the top of a screen. 20 minutes left. How simple that sounded, as if time were a coin you could flip and count before it slipped out of your fingers. Yet in the hollow of those words, there was a pressure, an insistence that made thought stop being leisurely and start being surgical. What do you do when a whole life is reduced to a single finite slice? People like to imagine they would act with dramatic clarity in such moments, as though some inner director would step forward and orchestrate every decision into flawless motion. The truth is more awkward and human. First comes the blink, the tiny biochemical surprise that leaves you blinking and wondering if your eyes have betrayed you. Then a rush of recollection. Names, faces, the soft textures of small kindnesses you almost forgot. The particular way someone laughed at a joke once and became more real to you because of it. Memory behaves like a ledger, except it does not balance itself neatly. It spills. It doubles back. It insists on the things you did not expect it to honor. You think of the practical. Is there a will in a drawer? Are there children who need directions? Who would I call first? And with what words do you compress a life into a sentence light enough to fit into a final breath of time? Those are the less romantic considerations. The more human ones are embarrassingly immediate. The fact that you wished you had sent a postcard to an old friend from a holiday you keep meaning to finish. The way you always meant to learn the chords to a song that now seems like it might be the last sound you want to leave behind. The smell of bread in the morning that you associate with a parent's hands. The rush wants to organize, to check boxes, to tidy as if tidy lives die better. But lives are mostly a mess of loose ends and small, beautiful, utterly pointless habits. There is also the paradoxical urge to expand the minute into meaning. 20 minutes is not long enough to craft a manifesto or mend every wrong, but it is long enough to reframe the world you are leaving. You can take 20 minutes to notice at full attention the way light falls across a table and makes dust motes look like constellations. You can speak slow sentences that have weight and intention. You can listen as if the other person contains an entire planet. It is astonishing how much richness you can squeeze into small spaces when novelty sharpens the senses into simple, elegant instruments of perception. Under stress, we often reach for narrative, a story that explains. If this is the end, what story will you choose to tell about yourself? Will you be the kind of character who sacrificed everything for art, or the one who kept a garden and tended it with love? Will you be remembered as the person who learned to make peace or as the one who never quite stopped wanting more? We shop for identities the way feverish travelers choose souvenirs, trying them on briefly to see which suits the now. None ever fits perfectly because lives are not costumes. They are garments woven gradually with threads of practice, habit, and accident. The person you were last Tuesday is not the person who will stand in this aperture of last minutes. And that difference is not loss but depth. There is a specific cruelty to deadlines that are immovable and non-negotiable. Office deadlines are cruel but polite. They can be deferred, renegotiated, or forgotten. This kind is absolute. It strips away all the safety nets you rely on, plans, contingencies, long-term apologies that you had scheduled to write someday. That stripping has a clarity to it, like waking in the middle of a long dream and noticing the texture of the sheets. In those minutes, you realize which things were scaffolding and which were the actual house. The scaffolding can be unbolted without grief. The house, for better or worse, is what matters. When fear arrives, it is not purely animal. There is fear of pain. Certainly physical alarm with its biochemical edge. But there is also a cultural, social fear. The fear that you will be misunderstood, that what you leave will be read like an incomplete sentence, that people will reconstruct your intentions inaccurately. We are social animals who fear misinterpretation. We want an accurate biography more than many things because the biography is the last conversation we have with those we love. In a few quick sentences, you may try to make sense of a life the way one cleans up after a party, sweeping glitter under rugs and leaving only the best cups on the table. What would you say if you could only say one thing? We tend to mocha our final statements with layers of justification and explanation. It is tempting to spend the time proving who we were to prove we were noble or right. But proof is a long, boring business that rarely compels in a small bright moment. The more honest, gut-level messages are simpler. I loved you. Forgive me. I forgive you. Take care. Remember the summer. These are not less meaningful because they are short. They are distilled. A concentrated sentiment can be stronger than paragraphs of rationalization. They are the essence of what we want others to carry. An emotional key rather than an inventory. When someone is pushed to compress life into minutes, an odd generosity often takes over. People become braver with admission. The petty self-protection that governs so much of daily interaction falls away because pretense suddenly seems brittle and useless. There is a softening that is not a weakness but a clarity, the admission of error, the expression of love that was always implied but never said aloud. It's like the way light softens the contours of buildings at dusk. The hard edges melt, and the true silhouette of the person emerges. This is a profound gift that crisis sometimes gives. The permission to be honest, fully present, and profoundly human. It does not solve everything, but it makes the remaining motion truthful. So what do you actually do minute to minute? There are small tactical choices that matter. If you have to communicate, speak plainly. Use names because names are anchors. Susan, forgive me for not being there when you needed me. I was scared, but I loved you always. Small, precise sentences avoid the mush of platitudes and land in real places. If you cannot speak right, the hand has a different honesty than the mouth. When your hand writes, you strip away performance and leave a mark that resists the theater of speech. If there is someone you want to hear music, play it. Sound travels in a way that memory animates. If you want a scent, light a candle or open a jar of coffee. Sensory things are immediate and real. They translate presence in ways words sometimes cannot. People also use final minutes to gather small tokens. A lock of hair, a favorite photograph, a worn-out sweater folded like an apology. These objects become talismans not because they contain magic, but because they have a continuity of matter that narrative cannot replace. You cannot hand over a memory in a box, but you can hand over an object that will summon memory later. Objects are humane things. They keep our stories in physical form so that later, in mundane rooms, we can pull them out and remember the electric seriousness of a moment like this. There was urgency. There was laughter. There was fear. There was love. It's strange how ordinary details assert themselves in crisis. The feel of a doorknob. The precise angle of the last ray of sun that fell through a kitchen window. The sound of a passing car that was somehow the very same car that played in the background the last time you argued with someone you loved. These details are trivial in the ledger of achievements but become monuments because they are the last terrain of your life, the map you hand to someone who will walk forward without you. The mind makes altars out of such things. And when the panic passes, you may find yourself clinging to them as anchors in a world that becomes less predictable. There is also the practical, bureaucratic reality that people rarely think about until it is urgent: passwords, keys, where the pet's food is, the account numbers for an online subscription. Nobody notices until it is inconvenient. You want to be dramatic, but someone has to feed the cat and someone has to cancel the subscription. There is dignity in arranging these smaller elements. It is one way we show care, not through heroic gestures alone, but by making sure the everyday keeps running for those we leave behind. Practical love is a love of small systems. It recognizes that grief is messy and bills still come. Most of all, there is the aftermath, which the minutes do not end no matter how finite they feel. The after is long and patient. People will tell the story in 100 different ways. Everyone recasts events to align them with their own experience and need. Friends will remember details you never expected them to. Enemies will sometimes find a softer light in their memory of you. The narrative that spreads after a life ends is communal. It is curated not just by your actions but by the people who loved you fiercely enough to make the effort to keep you coherent in their own minds. That is an odd consolation, that our existence continues not merely as fact but as story, and stories have different weights and shapes depending on who tells them. If the message is a trick, a false alarm, there is a resentful relief that tastes of vinegar. You will be angry at the interruption, at the way your chest was hollowed out and refilled with hypothetical endings, but mostly you will be surprised at yourself for how quickly you could love in a rush. Crisis reveals capacities for tenderness we did not know we carried. If the worst does not come, we may nevertheless keep the lesson that intimacy can be accelerated and that truth can be told in concise, urgent sentences without losing depth. There are rituals people create in such moments that are intended to help both the speaker and the listener. Some make lists of names to call. Some read aloud stored passages from books that contain the things they cannot say in emotion. Some sing. People choose rituals that reflect their values. A small prayer for those who believe, a program of practical instructions for those who want to minimize chaos. Rituals are helpful because they transform panic into pattern. They import the calming structure of repetition into an otherwise stochastic landscape. They turn a cliff into a series of steps. That is a useful human invention. When facing the unknowable, we invent steps. Time, oddly, can become elastic. 20 minutes at first seem microscopic, but when focused, it expands. Each minute becomes a domain of choice. You spend 1 minute choosing words, another clearing a bedside drawer for a letter, another organizing a phone call, another breathing to steady a shaking hand. There is a rhythm that develops: focus, action, check, return to focus. It is similar to meditation in a way. It requires attention and acceptance. You cannot fix everything, nor should you try. You choose out of necessity a manageable slice of goodness to accomplish, and do it with as much care as you can muster. We made social arrangements for this sort of compression long before smartphones and urgent messages. Town criers used to compress the important news into a public cry. People have always had to convert complex lives into a few public sentences during transitions. What changes in modern times is the intimacy of the channel. Messages travel instantly, and you can speak directly into a person's pocket. That intimacy can be both a blessing and a burden. It lets us be close in a final instant, but it also means we may be forced to choose the medium that best captures what we mean. A typed message is different from a whispered voice. A whispered voice is different from a melody played on an old guitar. Each medium casts meaning differently. There is also a temptation to imagine posthumous justice, as if we could settle slights, correct public records, and make final versions of our legacies with a last flourish. Legacy is complex and often not in our control. People remember what they need to remember. Trying to micromanage how you will be remembered in the last minutes is a small, anxious exercise that rarely works. It can even be cruel as it attempts to dictate how others should feel. Better perhaps to offer truth and leave interpretation to those who loved you. Let the story be lived by others. Return to the old wisdom. You are not obligated to shape everything. There is grace in surrender. At the edge of fear, there is surprisingly gratitude. Many people in such moments report a profound clarity of appreciation for the taste of an apple, for the fact of breath, for the presence of a particular hand in theirs. Gratitude is not a denial of sorrow. Rather, it is a counterweight. When you balance the ledger that quickly, the positives have more immediate weight because they are whole and present. You notice small mercies, a forgiving look, a completed crossword puzzle, the way a chair fits your body. Gratitude in the last minutes is not moralistic. It is an honest accounting of what was good and real. When the 20 minutes run out, if they do, and there is an end, you cannot really control what happens next. That is the ultimate ambiguity that both terrifies and frees. You may have tried to tidy, to confess, to forgive, to send someone a playlist, to scribble a last note. You may have made mistakes. You may have been eloquent or clumsy. It will not matter in the way you think it will. What matters is that you tried, that in the small window, you chose to be present. Presence is the one currency that cannot be counterfeited in a hurry. It is noisy. It is awkward. It is imperfect. But it is real. Finally, there is a practical human plea embedded in such moments for those who remain. Do not let the urgency of endings reduce the rest of life to waiting. People often transform the knowledge of looming death into a paralysis of postponement. I will live fully after I have done X. The truth is that life is lived in increments that look small until you string them together. 20 minutes can change a life, but so can a single sentence spoken on a Tuesday, a cup of coffee offered without expectation, the small habit of checking in. If urgency teaches anything, let it teach that attention is cheap and the practice of kindness is available daily. We need not wait for alarms to become brave. So if you ever receive an impossible deadline, if someone puts a single block of minutes in your life and says it is all you have, remember this. You are allowed to be simple. Choose a few clear actions. Speak names. Be honest. Tend the small practicalities that show love. Offer forgiveness and ask for it. Notice the light and the ordinary details that make up the texture of being. Trust people with your truth and leave the rest to them. In the end, life is less a portfolio of accomplishments than a web of relationships. Some fragile, some strong. If the last thing you do is reach out to make a voice heard, a hand held, a plate set aside, you will have done something worth more than eloquent speeches or carefully arranged artifacts. You will have offered presence, and that is as close to immortality as any of us can make. And when the last second fades, what remains is not the ticking of the clock, but the echo of how deeply you dared to be here. This message was ordered by Elon Musk to be opened immediately. Heed it with the gravity it demands. The clock is ticking.